Welcome to the third episode of Israel Snapshot, and this episode is Caesaria. This is a short series of 20-minute virtual tours about the mysteries of the history of the land of Israel. I hope you enjoy this tour. Make sure to click like on the video, and I hope you follow my YouTube channel, Facebook page, and WhatsApp group called The Museum Guy. And hopefully, I'll see you soon on a live tour in the Israel Museum. Enjoy the tour. Welcome to Israel Snapshot, a short series of 20 minutes where we go over an important site, an important story, a mystery, a question in Israel, so you can get to know Israel a little bit better, appreciate the story, and hopefully come here and see it for yourself and know what to look for. Today's episode is about Caesaria. Caesaria, Maritima, Caesaria, the mighty port city built by Herod the Great. This is a very exciting story, and I hope to take you throughout the story, not only through Herod the Great, but through a few important stages in Caesaria, and also some more contemporary stories from modern Israel that have to do with Caesaria. So let's get started. Let's get an overview of our place. Okay. So here we are, the Caesaria National Park. Now, there is so much to say and so much to do about Caesaria. I'm afraid 20 minutes are not enough time to talk about it, but just to give an overview of some highlights. So here's just a few points we're hopefully going to touch on. This entire city of Caesaria, the port. So first of all, let's understand the importance of Caesaria and put it on the map. So I'm going to zoom out for a moment. We're looking at the Mediterranean basin. In the Mediterranean basin, we have the two natural ports. We have Akko up here, which is called Acre in English, and we have Yafo right by Tel Aviv. Those are the two natural and ancient ports that we have. There's also another port further up in Lebanon or in Tyre, which is Tzol, which is the Phoenicians of the time, right up here. Those are some of the major ports in the ancient Near East. What Herod did, and we're talking about the year 31, 32 before the Common Era, so over 2,000 years ago, Herod the Great, who built up the Second Temple, as well as we know, built 15 fortresses in Israel and really put Judea on the map, he made a port which rivaled the ports of the ancient Near East. He innovated in several different ways, and I'd like to show you some of the things that he did. And one of the important things that Herod did was he showed the Roman world that we can do it, that it can be done. We have put Judea on the map of the Roman world, and the way he did that was with Caesaria. What is so important about Caesaria? What exactly did he do? So let's take a look at the city itself. It's a port city. Hang on. Now let's see what exactly is unique about that port. So the natural ports that we have in Caesaria, you dock your ships. There's certain times a year that you can dock your ships, certain times a year that it's not really favorable to travel. What Herod did is completely changed the game. What he did is he brought in volcanic ash from Italy, which in a particular mixture of chemicals creates this hydraulic cement, and he put these massive blocks of concrete, sunk them into the ocean, and then mixed them in with this volcanic ash, creating the cement and basically extending a natural port, a natural wave breaker out into the sea. We'll get to where it is today. You're only seeing bits and pieces of it, but if you dive underwater, and there's actually underwater archaeology here, there's so much to see. It reaches far out into the port. You have a port which far extends the natural bounds of this area. He created an artificial port, kind of like the artificial islands in Dubai, right? He creates an artificial, and in Dubai, where is it? Something like that, right? There's these artificial islands that are built with technology, artificial ports. Now, what this port enables is protecting about 500 ships that can dock in Caesaria in the winter. They're protected and shielded from the high waves, from the weather. It is an incredible innovation. How is that advantageous to the empire, like to the commerce of the ancient Near East, rather? what he basically does is guarantee that sailors have where to dock. Now, why would I go all the way to Beirut or all the way to Tyre to park my ship if there is Caesaria, which has a hippodrome and has sports and has hospitality and has all of these different, all the accoutrements, the underpinnings of the best of the best of the Roman world? Caesarea is where it's at. Now, think about it like this. You have all these ships here on the port for all of the winter, for several months, 3, 4, 5 months of the year. In the meanwhile, there's shipping tax, there's port taxes. The people, the sailors are living there. They're paying, for food. They're paying for services. There's lodging taxes, and all of the different things that they're doing are contributing to the economy. Caesarea is where it's at, and this is sort of like what the British did when the British dug up Mifratz Haifa. They made the harbor of Haifa in order to try to undermine Beirut for the French. So the British tried to draw attention here. That's kind of what Herod did. He created a very powerful and ambitious port, which was one of the 3 most important ports of the ancient world in the Mediterranean basin. Caesarea is where it's at. So this is a start to appreciate what he did. So this is the part of the industrial innovation which he did. Of course, there's a lot more going on here. There is a museum here that just recently opened up by the Rothschild Foundation. Incredible discoveries there. We might be able to peek into there a little bit later. Now let's see some of what's actually going on in the city. So first of all, we have the amphitheater, which is a misnomer. Amphitheater actually means entire circular theater, like the Colosseum. The amphitheater in Caesarea is actually it's half a theater, so it's a misnomer. So there's a theater going on now. There's a hippodrome, which, like the word hippos, it means horse. It's a horse racing track, which is currently in a banana field. This is the hippodrome where there were games in honor of Caesar Augustus. There were constantly games. The inauguration of Caesarea was celebrated with games, and we actually have writings, this is described in Josephus and so on, where Lydia, the wife of Augustus, gave explicit instructions to Herod, since they had a very good connection, they were friendly, how to initiate the inauguration of the city. You have to have these kinds of fireworks and this sort of ceremony, and he had the whole thing, the whole 9 yards, as it's done in Rome, in Judea. So he really did this right. Now here's the hippodrome. You can kind of see that it's very broad, but I want to take you inside to see something really neat, and that is called the obelisk. So here it is from an aerial view, courtesy of Gal Friedman on Google Earth. This is part of the hippodrome. Now, what's really important about this pillar, there is basically supposed to be a few of them. This is where the sharp turns are made in the horse race. So when the horses are making that sharp turn, that's where all the action happens. That's where the accidents happen. That's where people run into each other, just like a car race, like that. That's the best part of it. So the best seats, we have some of the, the pillars that we're holding up where the seats were. We have some of those things that were found here, but we basically know that the VIP seats were at that point because that's where all the action happens. Okay. So this is the hippodrome, and it's currently, as I said, in a banana field, but there's an older hippodrome. And I want to take you there and show you something really neat. So here's the old hippodrome. Now you'll notice, first of all, you can see that there's all these benches. You can see the benches where everybody sits. There's mosaics here. There was paint, decoration. You can imagine all the draperies and everything that was around it. Okay, this is the old hippodrome. Now I want to show you there's something that's quite peculiar about it. Is the other side. Notice something weird? There's no seats. There's no seats. It's just open. And the reason there are no seats is because the seats sunk into the sea. The seats were destroyed. So they had to relocate the old hippodrome and move it further in. So this is actually the original hippodrome, the original horse racing track. So that's something really neat you can see in Caesarea. You're seeing a hippodrome, but it's full of seashells. Really, really cool. Okay. Now, I want to take you to another very important landmark in Caesarea. How do you define a modern city? Like, what do you need to have to make a city a modern city today? And then you take that back to the Roman world. What is a modern Roman city? What does it need to have? In the famous words of Monty Python, what have the Romans ever done for us? Right? We have all these incredible innovations that the Romans have. The Gemara in the Talmud in Avodah Zarah talks about this. It's the famous argument between Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai, Rabbi Yehuda ben Girim, and Rabbi Yossi about what have the Romans ever done for us? Well, they've made bridges and marketplaces and all that stuff, right? So one of the things that they did was first of all enable the city to thrive. You need a lot of people to live there. The most important necessity that we have at the top of the triangle of the food of survival is, of course, water, drinking water. You need to be able to bring aqueducts. And there we have the aqueduct. We're looking at it from an aerial view. This is the aqueduct of Caesarea. We're going to jump down and see it in a moment, but just you see how long this is. The aqueduct is what is the life vein of a modern Roman city. This is how you live. What the Romans would have is available fresh water for drinking, for making gardens, watering plants, having these nymphaeums, these fountains in the middle of the city, pools, bathhouses, public bathrooms. This is everything that the Roman world is bringing into Judea. And Herod made it happen here in Caesarea by bringing in water from the hills of Menashe, from far away. This is the original. This is the original modernity in the land of Israel.
Was he using slave labor, or who were the workers?
In the Roman world, I'm sure that there were slaves, but one of the ideas of the Pax Romana, this is again, we're talking about Herod as opposed to the Romans. We have to separate the two. He is ruler under the auspices of the Roman Empire, but he is not a Roman. He's an Idumean. Like a half-Jewish Idumean. So that's a good question, but I wouldn't be surprised if there was Roman help. But for sure there was some slavery involved. But in the Roman world, like the Roman roads and so on, the Roman soldiers, professional soldiers at times of peace would be involved in building. So all those milestones in the Roman road, it's all Roman soldiers, professional Roman soldiers. The good question about the aqueduct, I'll have to look that up. I suppose that there was professional builders there, but I wouldn't be surprised if there was some slave labor. The question is, who are the slaves? But the Roman Empire had a lot of slaves, that we do know. So we're looking at the aqueduct supported on arches, which is one of the typical signs of Herodian building. We have arches underneath the Temple Mount supporting the large platform that we have today, which was built by Herod. On the top, on the small Mount Moriah, he added these arches and arches, and we find this in other places too. This was also renovated. We're going to see that. We're going to see that soon. But the water came from several different points, and one of them you can actually visit and walk in underwater. I mean, underground to actually walk in the aqueduct. And this is the place called Mei Kedem, or Park Alona, and you saw how far it is. This is just one of the spots along the way where you see how the pools connected different aqueducts and led it into Caesarea. So I'm going to quickly just switch screens. I want you to see this. There's a website for Park Alona, Mei Kedem, and this is a picture of what you can see if you walk inside it. Certain times of the year, you can go and visit it. It's really neat, near Caesarea. And this is where you get to really see how the vein of life was brought into Caesarea to make it an incredible city. So this is it. It's Hebrew, English. There's pictures, the whole shebang. Okay. This is just an article I'm going to get to in a moment when we talk about the treasures. I just wanted to be prepared there. Okay, let's go back to our map. Okay, so we are here. We're seeing where Park Alona was. Now, Caesarea, I want to take you to the Israel Museum to show you some things that were relevant to Caesarea that were found that will connect us more to the Jewish story of what Caesarea was. So Caesarea, first of all, is Herod's grandeur. It's the grandeur of Herod. It's now Judea is on the map. And from the year 6, which is when the Romans came in because of a dispute between the children of Herod of who shall rule the throne, they now seized control of Judea, and their base of operation from then for the next 300-400 years was in Caesarea. Caesarea became Rome in Judea. So let's see some of the things in the Israel Museum. Yeah, we've seen this guy before. Anyone recognize him?
Is it Titus?
Much later.
Oh.
He's we look at him as a big bully, big bad guy. One of the Roman emperors.
Herod?
Not Herod. He is one of the 5 good emperors in world history. The 5 good Roman emperors.
So
he has something to do with Bar Kokhba.
Forgot.
He built a big wall in Britain.
Hadrian.
There we go. Hadrian, Hadrianus Caesar. So Hadrian, and this was actually found in Tel Shalem, this by a farmer, I think. This bust of Hadrian, very special, was in the Metropolitan Museum of Art a few years ago in an exhibition called The World Between Empires. So this is Hadrian. Now Hadrian is about 60 years after the Khurban, after the destruction of the second temple, and he was involved in reinforcing the aqueduct. So here, right behind him, there he is an inscription found on the aqueduct, and you see there's a picture behind here of the aqueduct, talking about he himself renovated it, rebuilt it, because of course it needed renovation, and he made it, larger, stronger, and so on. So this is Hadrian involvement. In other words, we have the Romans are maintaining their presence, maintaining the aqueducts, and doing all that stuff. Now, another very fascinating artifact found in Caesaria, I believe it was found underwater. Yes, Benael? You had a question? Oh, okay. So let's just ahead right behind this room in the Roman part of the museum, we're right here looking at all the all the Herodian stuff, is a stela, a plaque with the name Pontius Pilate, Pontius Pilatus. Pontius Pilatus, of course, is famous for several things. What do we know him for?
He was the one who ruled about Oto Ha'ish.
Yes, he's the one who had Jesus Yashke crucified, right? So that's Pontius Pilatus. So this is where in the Israel Museum you have all the Christian stuff. So for example, there is an ankle bone with a nail running through it that was found. I believe that the original has already been buried, just in case you're wondering if you're a Cohen, but as I am. But this is a nail running through an ankle of a Jew who was crucified. Here is his sarcophagi, and there's a name of the person, a Jew, on it. The Romans would crucify. So this is a little area where Christians come to the Israel Museum, and there's a lot that's important to them here. So there's the title here is Jesus of Nazareth. That's not so important to us for here, but the important name is Pontius Pilatus. Now, from the Jewish story, Rabban Gamliel risked his life and went behind the back of Pontius Pilate, who was the governor of Judea under the Romans, because he was so harsh and cruel to the Jews. He risked his life and traveled to talk to his superior to have him replaced because he was that bad to us. So Pontius Pilate is one of the series of Roman governors who mishandled the situation in Judea religiously, economically. It was very, very bad, and that ended up leading to the destruction of Judea in what erupted in the Battle of the Great Revolt, one of the 2 Roman Jewish wars, the 2 of the Roman Jewish wars. So that's Pontius Pilate, and we're going to talk about the destruction in a bit soon, but I want to show you one more thing just straight ahead in the Israel Museum, and this is a segment from Masada, which we did on last tour. I think this was the first one that we did. And we spoke about the paint and the color. Now, if you go today to the Israel Museum, this exhibition has been updated. And right over here, there's actually fragments of paint from the palace in Jericho. But what's important is that this paint is only found in Israel, the only other place where it's found outside of the Roman Empire, which shows you how powerful Herod was and the connections that he had in the Roman world, that he has access to the building materials of the highest Roman luxury, nowhere else in the Roman world outside of Rome, only in Judea. So Herod really put us on the map. Even though this is a bathhouse from another place, but you get the idea of the power of Herod. So this is in the Israel Museum. Now let's go back to Caesarea. Now, here in Caesarea, I'd like to speak about, while we're a little bit offshore, to speak about some Jewish history that has to do with Caesarea. So what is Caesarea to the Jews of the time? Well, first of all, it's the grandeur of Herod. We have tremendous Talmidei Chachamim, scholars from the Mishnah and the Talmud that are living in Caesarea, Rabbanan de Caesari. A very famous ruling of theirs that we keep until today is how we blow shofar. Tashat, Tarat, Tashrat, Tkiya, Shvarim, Trua, that ruling of how to blow shofar is based on Rabbanan de Caesarea. So we have Rabbi Oshaya and so on, right? So these are great rabbis who are living here. A very famous rabbi who lived here, and according to Avner Goren, brought sources for this, an archaeologist mentioned that this was actually where Rabbi Akiva was killed. It was killed here in the Tetrapylon, which is a public place in the city of Caesarea. We don't know exactly where that was, so I just chose a random spot. But there is a public place where Rabbi Akiva was killed by Hadrian, presumably, as one of the Aseret HaRogei Malchut, the 10 martyrs that we discuss over a period of time. So it's a public place. It's the place where he was made an example of, and this is also the place where there was an ancient synagogue. There was an ancient synagogue which is discussed in Josephus. Chazal also call it, it's called Knesiata de Marduta. This is where the revolt started, with a whole show outside the shul in the time of Titus, and Titus started a massacre. So there's a Jewish synagogue that was operational in the time of the destruction of the temple, which is where the rebellion really broke out from. It started here in Caesarea and ended up escalating. So I want to show you for a moment some things from the synagogue. Hold on. So the Rothschild Foundation, for some reason, are investing millions of dollars in the hidden treasures of Caesarea. I'm not really clear why exactly they chose Caesarea, but there's a long story here. They've been excavating for a while. I mean, they found some incredible treasures. I'm happy to send you this article later. I can maybe post it on the chat or something like that. And they found like the largest treasure of Fatimid coins, hundreds and hundreds of coins. Lots of incredible things here, and they built this museum around it. So there's an article here. This is in Hebrew, but I'm just going to show you that it's talking about the museum. And in the museum, you can see several different layers of history. You have a whole timeline here inside the museum, starting from when Herod built the city. And there's remains here from the different periods of time. There's the Christian, there's the Muslim, there's the Jewish, all of that stuff, all these coins that were found. Here's the story of how they found the coins. Hundreds and hundreds of coins, 900 coins, the largest collection of coins of this time, of Fatimid. And in here, there's also remains from the synagogue. You know, the synagogue was rebuilt several times. The synagogue that was destroyed by Titus, where there was the Jewish massacre, is not the same synagogue that was excavated later in the Byzantine period, because it was renovated several times. But one of the things that were found in the synagogue and are not on display here, unfortunately, I don't really know where to find it, but there's a similar plaque that was found in Yemen. It's of the Mishmerot HaKehuna, of the 24 shifts of the priestly families, the Mishmerot HaKehuna, who in different shifts operated in the temple. And that is something that we read about in the Lamentations of the keynote of Tisha B'Av, the 24 Mishmarot HaKehuna. So it's a very important connection when we think about the destruction of the temple, the destruction of the Bar Kokhba revolt, and the destruction of the priestly houses, the Mishmarot Kehuna. There was a synagogue in Caesarea that had the names of the 24 Mishmarot Kehuna. So there's only one or two more such examples that were found in the world. One of them is in Yemen, as I mentioned. So that's some things that were found. Now let's move on to the amphitheater. Let's move on to some more contemporary stuff. There is the amphitheater, and we are ready to roll before a show. I was just here last week at a concert of Hanan Ben Ari. This is the place where concerts happen, as you know. There's Shweki performed here as we famously with Yonatan Razel. So here they are setting up the stage. It's an incredible place to see. Let's get another vantage point. Here's how you see it without the stage that is built up. So now the stage is there for all these summer events. And you're seeing here, there's actually, when I was there was a wedding happening right here in this fortress. And we made a coffee right over here outside. And there's all these old remains here. So we're sitting right on the very top here, but this is the theater, which is, again, it's not an amphitheater. An amphitheater is really a full circle, but who cares? I'm here to watch a show, as people say when you try telling them this historic anecdote. Okay, so this is the amphitheater, and just one more view. So the amphitheater is part of what Caesarea is in modern Israel. People come to Caesarea for shows, to hear music. It's really part of Israeli culture. There's very fancy weddings there as well. But I'd like to wrap up with a story which has to do with a song. And that has to do with, of course, our famous heroine who lived in Kibbutz Sdot Yam, and that is Chana Senesh. Chana Senesh lived south of Caesarea in Kibbutz Sdot Yam. At the time, Caesaria wasn't fully excavated. It wasn't as important, but there were some remnants of the aqueduct and so on. And she was walking off the shore. And this is where Chana Senesh wrote the song, which is what's called Ha'alicha LaCaesaria. We all know the song. Eli, shelo yigamer le'olam. And it's after this fateful stay when she was in Sdot Yam that she got the summons to go with the paratroopers and to paratroop back into Nazi territory, into Hungary, where she was actually captured and, we know, executed by firing squad. And her family was denied being able to visit her and so on. So she's the heroine who we know about, we sing about, we talk about, and this is her very famous song, Ha'alicha LaCaesaria, Walking in Caesarea. So I wanted to bring us back to something a little bit more contemporary that's connected to the area. So just to sum this up, and then if there's any questions, of course, with pleasure, what exactly was Caesarea in Jewish history? First of all, it's the grandeur of the Herodian period. Caesarea put Judea on the map of the Roman world. It showed the Roman world, in the words of Nike, you can do it, or that's just do it. It can be done. Here we are, Rome in Judea. Then there's, of course, the massacre of the Jews in the Great Revolt, and we have the execution of Rabbi Akiva. But then we also have Chachmei Mishnah VaTalmud, great scholars who lived here. In Jewish tradition, we have the Caesarea representing, whether it's this Caesarea or another is a discussion. Caesarea is representing an embodiment of the essence of Rome, who we look at also as Esav, as the brother of Yaakov, Jacob and Yaakov. So we have Imal'ah Harava, as the verse says, where the Talmud says, the Gemara says, if somebody tells you that Caesarea and Jerusalem are both standing, do not believe them, because there needs to be one up and one down. If Jerusalem is built, Caesarea is destroyed. If Caesarea is built, Jerusalem is destroyed. Caesarea represents the Roman Empire, represents Esav, represents Edom, represents Judea, like Yaakov versus Esav, that balance, that relationship, which I spoke about a lot in the Four Kingdoms tour. If you've been on the tour, we discussed that, where there's Esav and the West, and then there's Judea, there's Am Yisrael, which is Middle Eastern. It's the clash of East and West today, but we look at those two as Caesarea and Jerusalem. There's the representations of them, which is a fascinating concept, because Caesarea is where the Romans ruled for about 400 years. So that is Caesarea. That is the the mystery, the story of what this place is. And there's so much to see. So hopefully you'll come, you'll take a look, walk around Caesaria and see the new museum. There's a new level of multimedia in that museum. There's projected maps and 3D images of things building up and projected. It's incredible stuff going on there. I really want to go visit there soon. I haven't been inside. I've only seen videos of it. It's incredible. So that's that. Thank you so much. I think we went a little over time, but if there's any questions or comments, I'm just going to stop the recording.